It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, the Patriots of Act 746, they are on a mission to educate the voters of Arkansas, the people of Arkansas, about your gun rights, about the fact that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state, which means that we are a permitless carry state. You don't need a permit to carry open or concealed of a firearm. And there was a judge that cited the law in Arkansas late last year, and it's been what the Patriots of Act 746 has been saying for 5 years now. Now, here to talk more about the Patriots of Act 746 and everything that's going on, we've got, once again, Mr. Dan Borum is on. Dan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Paul. How are you this morning?
I am doing well, doing very well.
Very good.
So I wanted to have you on. I wanted to talk a little bit about, a couple of weeks ago, well, it seems like a couple of weeks ago, but I guess, what are we? We're into week 2 of the 2019. But there was a story that broke about a wrongful arrest in Forrest City. You remember the story I'm talking about, right?
Yes, the Jonathan Chadwick case.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, so Jonathan Chadwick was, charged with the weapon, but then not charged. They dismissed the charges after I believe Jan Morgan and others, they were basically like, hey, you guys don't know what the law is. This guy didn't break any law, and you arrested him. That's
exactly right. If you look back, Chadwick was charged under Statute 573-122, which was a knife law that no longer exists. So he was charged under a law that wasn't even in the books anymore, which is inexcusable. And so then Mr. Epperson had sent Freedom of Information Act regarding the Chadwick arrest report, and we find that the lieutenant, Mr. Darren Smith, had stated that the case was still under investigation, and which was an out because under the Freedom of Information Act law, which you can look up and you can get a copy of that and have it as a handbook to look through, see what the rules and regulations are concerning that act. But that was an out to say that we don't have to send it right now because it's under investigation. So then they were asked, the time frame of the investigation, and there was no response. And so there was a third Freedom of Information Act that was sent, still no response. And so that is when Jan Morgan had asked if she could call them and discuss this situation with them, and absolutely go ahead and call them. And she put some pretty hard pressure on them. And in the limelight that she is in, especially with on the national level, that obviously brought them to their milk to a certain point. And as soon as she got involved and spoke with them, they dropped the charges and even agreed to going through a class with Jan Morgan, concerning the laws. Now, whether that's happened or not, I don't know. Jan can tell us. Now, we find then that Lieutenant Eric Varner had called after the fact, after Jan had discussed this with them, and said that they were unaware of any Freedom of Information Act that was sent to them. And that was bogus as well, because screenshots were then sent to them and told them, which showed them that it was. And so they were doubting the emails. So screenshots were sent to them of the emails requesting the FOIA, and then the response is, we have a problem. And I was like, well, absolutely, you have a problem. And so that's kind of where we're at. And there, I can't say just straight out, but just, kind of dancing around the fact and seeing how the responses has been. And it seems that there's been information withheld, that the full disclosure of what's going on has not been brought out in the Freedom of Information Act. So
what's the recourse? I mean, if you have a law enforcement agency, the Forrest City Police Department, that is
Right.
refusing to comply with the law. First of all, it sends a terrible message to the people that, I mean, how are people supposed to respect the Forrest City Police Department when they themselves are openly in violation of the Freedom of Information Act?
Defying the law.
Yeah.
That's right. How do you expect people to have a respect for the law when law enforcement does not have a respect for the law themselves? And, that's an oxymoron. In order for people to if you want, as a law enforcement, people to respect the law, you have to set the example. I'm a pastor. If I want people to follow the doctrine of Jesus Christ, I myself must first be the one willing to set the example by following the doctrine of Jesus Christ. And the example is there. We find that the recourse that we have, Paul, is to be able to file suit in a situation like that. And we were just a wink away from filing suit. And yesterday evening, Mr. Epperson did finally get a response from the Forrest City Police Department. He had also sent in, he had requested that they give a public statement on Act 746, their stand on Act 746. There was no response on that. And he also requested that he be unblocked from their social media page. And they did unblock him. And he requested, through the Freedom of Information Act, all of the comments that had been made. See, what had happened was there were comments made concerning this case on their social media page, and a lot of these comments were removed and people blocked from commenting. And so they were addressed concerning that. And we find also that the response to Mr. Epperson was that they are no longer blocking people. They are implementing a new social media page. They're not going to block anyone. They're not going to remove comments. And so, there has been some improvement, but still yet full disclosure has not been given. And so also there was a request sent to them wanting all of the to go 5 years back, and all of the charges that were made, or arrest that was made concerning carrying a weapon. And the response was that they could not go 5 years back, but they could go 4 years back. And so we're waiting on that. And we replied that would be fine. 4 years back would be fine. And so we're waiting on that response to get that information. So that's kind of where we're at with the Forrest City Police Department. And this should have never happened, Paul. But, we have to, I have a great respect for good law enforcement. This is not an attack on all law enforcement. Mr. Tim Loggins is retired law enforcement. He's a great man. And I have a nephew that's law enforcement. I have members in the church that I pastor that are law enforcement, and they're great people. And they really respect their oath. If you look at the oath of law enforcement, in that oath, it says that they will uphold the Constitution. So that's what we're trying to do, is hold people accountable while at the same time trying to open dialogue and make connections, educate, and try to get this state turned around to where it should be, where we can enjoy the liberties that are given to us by our Creator.
I think what we have here, and we're talking with Dan Borum with the Patriots of Act 746, as I listen to you describe the struggle of getting the Forrest City Police Department to comply with the FOIA, as well as blocking people on social media and things like that, I think to myself that it seems like the department might be, I'll just be blunt, out of control.
Yes.
But then we have another problem, because if you have a local police department that is openly flouting the law, well, you could report them to the Arkansas State Police. But here's the problem with that. The Arkansas State Police is very hesitant to get involved or to make a statement. They won't make a statement on the Taft case. They won't make a statement on Act 746. And so do we see how all of this snowballs when we have law enforcement agencies that refuse to recognize what the law is, something that they're supposed to enforce? Now everything gets all of whack. I mean, when the larger agencies flout the law or refuse to recognize it, then your smaller law enforcement agencies do. But then it's I mean, Forrest City needs to be investigated, I think, by the Arkansas State Police. What do you think, Dan?
I agree 100%. Either they need to be investigated by the Arkansas State Police, or they need to be very forthcoming and change their policies and get on board with what the actual law is. Excuse me. There are scenarios that could prevent these things from happening again in other towns throughout the state. And as we have said before, and we continue to repeat, first of all, our acting attorney general needs to come out publicly and recognize Taft versus the state of Arkansas and what the Supreme Court judge has said concerning Taft versus the state of Arkansas.
No, you mean the circuit court judge, but go ahead and
excuse me, yes.
But go ahead and tell people what that circuit judge said in the Taft decision.
In that decision, it was stated that there is no criminal intent in just merely possessing a weapon, and it upheld 746. And while we know that 746, well, I mean, going all the way, as far as I'm concerned, you go all the way back to Article 2, Section 5 of the Arkansas State Constitution, which states the citizens of this state have the right to bear arms for their common defense. 746 strengthens that. And then Taft versus the state of Arkansas, with the ruling of the circuit judge, says that merely possessing a weapon does not show criminal intent. It does not show unlawful intent, and that it is perfectly legal for any citizen, as far as not being a felon, to carry a weapon for their common defense. Mm-hmm. And so it upheld the law. Now, that strengthened 746, and it made it very clear that we are a constitutional carry state, that you do not need a permit from the Arkansas State Police to carry open or concealed. And so, therefore, what we need is for our Attorney General to make a public statement concerning that, and we also need for our governor to recognize that. And we need for the Arkansas State Police to recognize that and still maintain their program for those who desire to have the permit for traveling out of state, and for states that recognize our laws. And here's the thing. They will still receive their revenue. They just need to be honest about the law, and then they will have respect. And here is another thing. I travel over in Oklahoma weekly. I'm going to be in Oklahoma this evening for our Wednesday night Bible study. I'm a resident of Arkansas. If our Attorney General will come out and make the public statement, then Oklahoma will recognize constitutional carry in Arkansas and have reciprocity, and I would not need a permit in Oklahoma to legally carry. And that's going to be the same in other surrounding states as well, Paul.
Yeah, because Oklahoma has a law where they will honor whatever your gun law is. Whatever the gun law is in your state, they'll honor it in an attempt to alleviate confusion. But Oklahoma's Attorney General is not going to do that until our Attorney General formally says, oh, by the way, not only do we have the law, but it's also now been tested in court. And it's been upheld in court.
Right. It's not. That's exactly right. And then Oklahoma would recognize it, and really, as a as an Arkansas resident, I would have stronger gun rights in Oklahoma than Oklahoma residents.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Which is sad to say, but that is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's where we're at on this case, Paul. And here's something that I would like to, that most people that are listening, they know this, but I want to read this right quick from an excerpt from the Declaration of Independence. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, government are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." Why can we not get that in our heads? That we have unalienable rights that are endowed to us from our Creator. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So take life. That means to protect life, to be able to secure life. And those rights do not come from the government. They come from God. They are natural rights. They are endowed to us by our Creator. Government is set in place to secure those rights, whereas now we see government that are striving to remove those rights, and they themselves are claiming to be the Creator and the ones who give us certain inalienable rights. That's wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully, with folks like you, Dan, and others, we can empower the people with the knowledge of what's really going on in government, and because I think the majority of the people agree with you and me. I don't think they agree with what's going on. So we just got to get the information out there. Dan Borum, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thank you, sir, and that's what the Patriots of Act 746, Arkansas Liberty Coalition, that's what we are about. We are about educating the people, making dialogue with our representatives, making good friendships, and continuing on for liberty in the great state of Arkansas. Thank you, Paul.
All righty. Thank you, Dan Borum. Folks, if you want to find out more about the Patriots of Act 746, just go to Facebook.com, and in the search bar, search for Patriots of Act 746 and request to become a member of the group because they're 17,000 strong.